What up, YouTube? This is Andrew Wright with another Review the Right Thing and 2 videos. So I'm hoping to get both of these uploaded here in the next 24 hours, get them edited and out for your viewing pleasure. And hopefully you enjoy them. And if you do, please subscribe to my channel, give me critiques, let me know what you'd like to see in the future, what can I do better, because I would like to keep doing this into 2021, like I say over and over again, get more content out there. I have to keep tweaking my thing as I do it because of time. I work a full-time job, but I also want to, I want to do more with this. I want to make this more of a thing that I pursue, you know? And so, yeah, let me know what you like, what you don't like, and yeah, do my best to accommodate and try to do different things, you know? Obviously, just like I said, just time is always of the essence. And you know, for some people, 2020 has been giving them more time. They've been trying to do what they can to isolate and be as cautious as they can so that we can return to some kind of normalcy. And there's just been so much music. A lot of these artists have been, you know, using the isolation as their creative outlet, you know. I'm sure this has been very hard on a lot of people, and so that little bit of normalcy is recording music and getting your feelings out there for a lot of these artists. And you know, and so that's what's, you know, there's just been so much music this year. 2020 has just been crazy. Keeping my commentary to a minimum because time is of the essence. Oh my god, time. There was just so much content. I was discovering so much. It really just became, what did I listen to the most? What did I continue to revisit? And, you know, some projects that maybe I could argue that I liked more, I just didn't spend as much time with. So this is more of just my favorites of 2020. And maybe in the future, I'll get to go back to some of these projects and I'll like things that I didn't mention more than things that I did mention. And I'm sure that's going to be a thing, but I tried to pit releases against each other as much as I could. But like I said, I just basically went down to what I listened to more, what grabbed me more, what did I, again, revisit more. But again, with Discovery and trying to keep these things to a minimum because I want to talk about them, I was looking into female rappers that were trying to push the genre forward that I was not, you know, exposed to just at the surface level, and I wanted to dig deeper and hear more of these stories and just experiences. It was just became very much something that I focused on. But then, you know, also 2020, who would have known I'd be enjoying a new Big Sean record or a Hayley Williams record? Because I've never been the biggest Paramore fan. I think they're very talented, but it's just not for me. However, I think the Hayley Williams record is really good and very powerful. And I would like to see where she can go from here because this is her first solo record. But then also comebacks from people like Alicia Keys, Toni Braxton, that were also great projects, but you know, they didn't make my list. I didn't get to listen to them as much and spend as much time with them. Or even just another T.I. record, which in 2020 I would have never thought I'd be getting, or a new Busta Rhymes record, both of which are also very entertaining, and I found myself enjoying every minute of those albums. But it's just also a part of rap that I don't revisit a whole lot because, you know, I have particular tastes, I guess, as far as what I gravitate more in terms of rap. And I've talked about this in my videos before. I kind of have that more classic style. I like the more jazzy rooted beats, the more classic soul inspired production, and that's just what I end up gravitating more towards. And finally, troves of other artists that I didn't give the attention that I would have loved to, like the new Man Man or the new Chicano Batman, which were also very enjoyable listens, or the new Kirk Weinstein, the new Enslaved, which I did listen to quite a bit, but again, not as much as I would have really liked to. Also newer bands that I've just discovered this year, like Selps and Guyria and Revenant Marquis, that I also didn't get to spend a whole lot of time listening to in between the wealth of music that we just had this year. And obviously, since I work full-time, watch movies, you know, I try to, you know, spend time with loved ones, and yeah, so things just take the back burner, unfortunately. But anyways, let's get into this. My favorites from 2020. Odious Mortem with Synesthesia. They released their first album in quite a few years. I think it was like 10 years, I want to say. If I went back, I could have known that. But great album from these tech masters, and just a great addition to their catalog. I really enjoyed this record, and so it definitely made my list. Black Dahlia Murder with Verminous. And again, I gave this a kind of a lower score towards the beginning of the year when I reviewed this, and I still stick to that. And again, this is one of those things where I could probably argue that there's things that I probably liked creatively more than this record, but I kept coming back to this record a lot. It's still very catchy. I just really enjoy Black Dahlia Murder's music, and so 2020 I kept coming back to this, and so I had to keep it on the list. Oranssi Pazuzu delivers their masterpiece, Mestarin Kynsi. And yeah, maybe I just threw out masterpiece lightly, but you know, I think this record is just super incredible, what they're trying to give to us with the psychedelic and the black metal, and even maybe a little bit of the krautrock. It's just, it is amazing stuff. Ulcerate punch us in the face with Stare into Death and Become Still, and I just think that this is another incredible record from them. Really showcases what they are trying to do with their mix of atmospheric, tech death, and a lot of dissonance, and it is just an amazing listen, and I just couldn't stop going back to it. Defeated Sanity deliver us the gut punch Sanguinary Impetus, which is another just brutal tech masterpiece. Another one I just kept finding myself going back to. You know, I think that genre as a whole kind of gets a little bit flooded. A lot of guys don't tend to like stick out from one another. I feel like it just becomes a kind of a blanket of a lot of the same sounds and riffs, and to me, like, these guys have just always remained constant, always releasing solid material, and 2020 was no exception, and much needed for this year. Imperial Triumphant, Alphaville. This is a band I just discovered this year for the first time, and I must say, it warped my brain. Their mix of just black metal, death, classical, jazz, and they just kind of meld it into this just mind fuck, and there's just so much talent just pouring out of these guys. For a three-piece, it is just intense, evil, and I just couldn't stop listening to it. I just kept revisiting this album. And I just spoke about the Pallbearer in my last video for my collection update, and wasn't sure if I was going to include it, but when I was kind of thinking about releases this year, and maybe this was something I didn't listen to as much as other releases, but every time I put this record on, it just really grabs me, and I just feel like I'm going on a journey. Their music is just, it's so engrossing, and the mix of psychedelics and doom, I just am never displeased. And again, this is just another great addition to their catalog. They just keep stepping it up and keep delivering great album after great album, and I just felt like it needed to stay in my faves. Spiritworld, Pagan Rhythms was something I also just recently discovered this year, courtesy of Mike Seatown in his solo updates on things that he was listening to, and this is just some amazing, pissed off, metallic hardcore, in vein of like Integrity or Ringworm, but they just kick it up a little bit more of a notch. The riffing is just so awesome, and it is just breakneck, headbanging badassery. Voidceremony, and I gotta look at the title of this one again because it is long. Entropic Reflections Continuum Dimensional Unravel. It's a mouthful, but man, these guys are pretty awesome. Again, in a genre that I feel like kind of becomes a little bit flooded, that throwback to classic death metal, you know, where you either have guys that are kind of just doing obituary or convulse, or straight up death worship. It's another genre that I feel like I said, it gets kind of flooded. A lot of people end up just kind of sounding too much like their influences, and it just doesn't stand out to me enough. However, these guys kind of bring in that little bit of death influence, that little bit of just like Bolt Thrower or classic Morbid Angel, and they kind of smash it all into this groovy, slow. At times, it does pick up with some more blast beats and some crazy fretless bass. But again, this album just, from start to finish, my jaw hit the floor, and I have gone back to it multiple times, and it's definitely one of my favorite metal releases of the year, so it definitely had to stay in my list. There's just no way for me to condense this down to anything less than like 25 things, because there's just so much. I could have mentioned a million other things, but here we go with some more. Fuck the Facts, Pleine, Noirceur, another one that I just mentioned in my update, grindcore band from Canada. And I just really thought this album was pretty incredible because they were able to adopt a little bit something new with the experimentation. Just great work. We've got NNAMDÜ with Brat. He was a Chicago MC, multi-instrumentalist that I just discovered this year. His music kind of incorporates elements of rap, math rock, folk, alternative, and kind of mashes it into this just beautiful opus. And this album just kind of completely blew me away, knocked my socks off. It was one that I didn't get to review, but I would give this high marks, and just definitely another favorite of 2020. Run the Jewels, obviously, with RTJ4. I mean, how can you not like it? This definitely has to stay in my top of the year as well. Unfortunately, the Grammys snubbed them, much like other people who definitely deserve nominations over some of the other things. But again, we all know that the Grammys, again, aren't for the music. And if you think that they are for the music, well, I'm sorry, but yeah, if you can look at some of the artists that they put up there and you can tell me that that they are pushing their genres forward, you are crazy. But anyways, the next one then that actually did get nominated that I highly enjoyed this year, a new discovery for me as well, but I mean, it definitely sits in my top of the year for sure, was the Royce da 5'9" with the Allegory. And so I was very happy to see that he was actually nominated for something. Very well deserved. This is an amazing record, and he's a great artist. Definitely go check this project out. Freddie Gibbs and the Alchemist with Alfredo, another one that was nominated for a Grammy this year, which was also very surprising because to me, where Royce da 5'9" kind of fits that almost more mainstream kind of side, he is obviously talking a lot more about issues and stuff that a lot of the artists in his genre or scene do, and so I think he's kind of stays out of that lane a little bit, but makes sense though as far as a nomination. Freddie Gibbs, I feel like he is just straight up like drug dealing, life of crime, these are my stories MC, and I just feel like that's not something that always gets the attention of the Grammys. I mean, you have Lil Wayne obviously talking about gun violence and drugs and stuff like that, but he talks about it from almost a different perspective of like the more party and ridiculous and, lavish side of the rap industry, whereas, Freddie Gibbs is coming from a completely different side, and just surprising to see his nomination, but nonetheless, it's an amazing record, and I'm very happy to see it nominated. Definitely stays in my top of the year. Quelle Chris and Chris Keys with Innocent Country 2. This was something I purchased on line earlier in the year and had some issues with shipping and getting the wrong record, but finally received the right one. Another person who I would have never known about had it not been for the guys at Dead End Hip Hop. This was one of the things that Ken had introduced at the beginning of the year, saying that was one of his favorite for the first 6 months. And yeah, this totally deserves more recognition. Like, I think Quelle Chris is amazing. Great flows, great beats. This definitely has that more classic sound that I like, and that I can obviously see that Ken likes just based on like the things that he enjoys when they're talking about their reviews in Dead End Hip Hop and the things that he doesn't enjoy. It makes total sense that this is up his alley, and I love it, so it had to stay on my list for this year. Angry Blackmen with Headshots, something I found just randomly going through YouTube, ended up buying their stuff on Bandcamp, talking to the dude on Instagram quite often. Super cool guy. Quentin, I haven't been talking to Brian, the other guy, as much, so Quentin's a super cool dude. He's supported my page a little bit on here, and I've tried to definitely support him, and you know, through word of mouth, spread the love on Some Angry Blackmen, because that album is also pretty goddamn incredible. Definitely something we needed for 2020, and made my list. Benny the Butcher with Burden of Proof. It was hard because so many Griselda projects this year, and it's really hard to narrow it down. A lot of because I kept going back and forth between projects because I wanted to give everything equal attention. And as a result, you know, I didn't gain a whole lot of like strong feelings for certain projects. You know, I liked everything as a whole a lot, and it was really hard for me to pick one or the other. However, Burden of Proof really kind of just pushed through that for me, and this is just a great record, and I think Benny's just, you know, continues to be one of the strongest in the bunch. You know, sorry Westside, sorry Conway, I love you guys. You guys are absolutely incredible. Boldy, keep doing what you do. You know, it's just really nice, though, to see that Benny was able to do this with one record. You know, he's released very little this year, and put out just such a strong project. You guys have released all very strong projects. You know, so no hate. I'm not trying to throw any shade, but I just liked Benny's a little bit more. But that's not to say that you guys didn't make my list as well, because Conway I really enjoyed from a King to a God. As far as all the stuff that you had put out this year, that definitely stayed in my top. I kept revisiting that over and over again, and I think it's a great record. West Side Gun, Pray for Paris. This was a tough one for me just because this is the first Griselda project that I listened to, and right off the bat, the gritty rhymes and the production and, you know, the classic throwback to the good old days of rap, it was just such an appealing thing for me, and so there's might be this little bit of nostalgia with this record. I might argue that Fly God 2 is maybe better, and I don't think I think the newest one is probably the worst of his projects this year, and that's an unfair statement only because I haven't listened to that as much, and I've definitely given the other stuff more of a listen. But Pray for Paris just kind of sticks out there for me, so it had to stay in my top of the year. And I was going to talk about kind of my little intro into Griselda in an earlier video this year, because it was just kind of a random idea that I had, and I was going to kind of pit the releases together and basically say which ones were my least favorite and stuff like that. I'm really glad I didn't, because Boldy James's Manger on McKnowles was going to be one of the ones that I was kind of like, I don't understand this one as much. Like, he chose a producer that did some really crazy experimental jazz stuff with this, and I didn't think it worked, but I kept finding myself going back to it and going back to it and going back to it, and it fits so well. That weird, you know, balance between this crazy, you know, free jazz and his gritty rhymes. There's just something about it that is just, you know, I just kept coming back to it over and over and over again, and it is a great record. Another one that I didn't get to review this year, but definitely makes my top. Yumizuma with Truth or Consequences, was another one that I reviewed earlier in this year on this channel. And it's a great pop record. It's just a very fun, happy listen. Another one that I just kept going back to over and over again. It would always lift my spirits and brighten my day. And I gave it high marks earlier in the year, and it still holds those high marks for me. Great record. Highly recommend listening to this. Moses Sumney with Gray, another artist I discovered for the first time this year with, now I can't remember, his single was Cut Me Right or something like that. I can't think now. But anyways, Gray is just an incredible record. There's so many awesome songs, and, you know, lyrically he obviously struggles with a lot of, you know, issues of identity, and, you know, I think that's kind of a thing with this year just because of us being home all the time, and you start to think more, and you don't have that connection with people that we're used to, and we have to find those connections in a different way, at least temporarily, until we can beat this pandemic and get to a normal kind of life. But anyways, this was just another record that I just kept going back to, and it just really, I can't explain it any other way other than just, you know, I really loved it, and it has some great feelings, and just, I don't know, just really another one that kind of lifted me up even through his pain and his struggle. It's got this hopefulness to it at the same time. And yeah, so it's just great. Phoebe Bridgers with Punisher, another great project from the singer-songwriter, and this was just another amazing release from this year. She is just such a creative person and writes some of the greatest lyrics, I think, in songwriting at the moment. You know, just always really enjoy her stuff, and the fact that she's only 2 albums and a couple EPs in, and she is just continuously just knocking down doors. Just so good, so good. And Garden Song is probably one of the most metal songs of the year. It's just great. Rina Sawayama with Sawayama is probably my favorite pop record in the last like 5 years for sure. I mean, it's just so good. Interesting production. She's got some crazy guitar parts in this album, showcases some great vocals. There's a lot to enjoy about this record. It's just very fun, and another one I kept going back to over and over again. And with other pop records this year, like the new Ariana Grande, which I enjoyed, or the new Lady Gaga, or surprisingly the new Miley Cyrus that I also enjoyed, this one, just against all of them, and against even some metal and rap releases, this just kept staying consistent in my playlist this year, and so I had to keep it on the list. And lastly, Fiona Apple with Fetch the Bolt Cutters, another artist I've just been in love with ever since her first album, and I think she just continues to just get better, or stay at least consistent enough, and is able to just put these albums out even after a 10-year hiatus, and they're just still so good. I don't think this is as good as her last one, but it's still, again, like after a 10-year hiatus and not putting anything out, it's just great that she can just come out of nowhere and just release an amazing record. So I had to keep it on my list, and it just kept, another one that just kept coming up in my play. And finally, I did want to mention just a couple things that didn't make the cut, however were, you know, just equally as enjoyable this year, along with the things that I mentioned in my introduction. Any of the other Griselda stuff, basically, there was so much of it this year, but like I said, all of it was pretty good. Even the stuff that I didn't like as much, it wasn't because it was bad, but it just pitting it against the other releases, it just didn't, you know, make the rotation as much. But honestly, any of those could have made my list. The new Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats with Unlocked was a great EP, and I really loved it. But another one that just didn't come up often, I didn't give enough time, and so therefore it just didn't make the cut. Odyssey with Odd Cure. This was a tough one because I actually listened to this record a lot. I mean, it's only an EP, it's like 7 songs, 8 songs, but there's a couple interludes in there where he's like, you know, talking to either, you know, grandmother, or there's just some other kind of dialogue there, but it's just a really good listen, but again, like pitting it against other things, and without trying to make this list extremely long, I decided to just cut it at the end. Clipping with Visions of Bodies Being Burned, another one I just haven't given enough time. However, I like it a lot, but in an effort to try to keep this as minimal as I could, I didn't keep it on the list. Reason with New Beginnings, another one that I did review earlier in the year, but it's not one of my favorites from the year. So I ended up cutting it. Again, it got repeated listens over and over again, but when I pit it against the other things in my list, it just was something I had to cut. Shabaka and the Ancestors was another one, as well as multiple other jazz artists that I just didn't get to put the time into this year, but they're worth mentioning. They just didn't make my favorites of the year. And literally tons of more artists and albums came out this year, or EPs. I did an EP list this year, because they were just things that I didn't think were being mentioned. Obviously, a lot of videos focus on, you know, full-length LPs and not the EPs, and there was tons of EPs that came out this year that I really enjoyed, that I wanted to give mention to, but they didn't make my final cut. You know, again, just time constraints and trying to keep this list as small as can, and I could literally name hundreds of things if I wanted to, but you guys wouldn't want to watch all that. That's so much information. And again, I didn't give every project a ton of, ear time, so I didn't feel comfortable saying, well, I really liked this, it was a favorite of the year, because again, when I pit it against some of the other things, it's just like I enjoyed those more, I gave those more time, and it's unfair for me to say I liked this, or I didn't like this, or whatever. I don't normally get into things that I don't like, though, so that's why I end up liking so many things, because I don't focus on the things that I don't like. So yeah, anyways, I'm going to wrap that up, because if I keep talking, I will make this video another 10 minutes long. What were some of the things you guys liked from 2020? Did you agree with my list of things that were my favorites? Did you have any things that you would take out or add? Let's talk about them in the comments. If you like my videos, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully in 2021 I will have much more content coming out to you guys. Let me know what you think. Love you all. Stay safe. Wash your hands.